Gobble, 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 gobble. I'm sure you could imagine why the stream is titled Gobble, Gobble, Gobble. We're less than a week away from Thanksgiving. Somehow. Already. Wow. Already heading towards the end of November. Felt like a minute ago this month fucking started. Felt like a minute ago this year started, for that matter. Wow. As I wait for people to file on in, guess I'll talk a little bit about my Thanksgiving plans, or really lack of Thanksgiving plans. um, yeah, I'm not doing shit for Thanksgiving this year. Well, my family isn't. Don't plan on cooking. We're not having anyone over. Actually, we haven't had anyone over for a few years now, anyway. So, well, more than a few years. Since my grandmother passed away, we haven't, well, actually, no, one time after my grandmother passed away, or twice, actually. The first Thanksgiving after she passed away, and then Thanksgiving of 2021, cousins and a bunch of other family came over. But 2022 till now, we haven't done shit for Thanksgiving. Well, actually, no. My uncle would make turkey, and we'd eat that, and just a little private thing with me and my immediate family that I live with. But no, this year we're not doing anything. Not even making turkey or having dinner or any of that. I mean, it's whatever. I was never like a. I mean, I liked Thanksgiving, but I was never like huge on the holiday where not doing anything this year is just a huge blow. That's my neighbor backing up across the street. Oh, there's quite a few people here. Hello, Mikey. Hello, Dylan. Gobble. Hello, Mexican Link. What's up? Had a good feeling good stream today. Yeah, it's the second to last Friday in November, so it was either only this Friday or next Friday, which would be Black Friday. I'd be streaming, but I didn't feel like streaming right after Thanksgiving. Um, yeah, I just saw the not the meeting that took place behind closed doors. The press wasn't invited to invited to that, but I saw the press conference, or the Q&A with the press that Zoran and Trump just did. I was planning on streaming a little earlier, like an hour earlier, but I was watching that, and I was waiting for Zoran to come out and give his own press conference in front of the White House, but as of starting this stream, he still hasn't come out, and I didn't feel like waiting. Um, Pleasantly surprised with how that went. I'm actually pretty happy that it went, smoothly. Actually, I can't say I'm entirely surprised that Trump seemed to be really charmed by Zoran, because Zoran just has like superhuman level charisma and charm. But contrary to what a lot of the media wants you to think, ooh, radical, scary jihadist. Um, but no, it's for the benefit of this city that their meeting wasn't a screaming match, and they're huge adversaries. Even talked about going after Con Edison, which made my mother pretty much cheer at the fucking TV screen. She's the one who has to be hassled with the Con Edison bill in the House. So yeah, I mean, I don't really have much to say besides I'm glad that the meeting seemed to have gone well. Again, more productive for the city, for their meeting to have gone well, as opposed to it, being a shit show screaming match, a la his the Zelensky meeting from the beginning of this year. I mean, that would have been more entertaining, I'm sure, but not really entertaining for, someone like me who actually lives in this city. I mean, not like I'm, holding my breath too much that Trump would is going to follow through with, making the city more affordable, since, he himself is a billionaire fuck, and he's also in the pockets of other billionaire fucks and corporations who benefit from, making this city and a whole bunch of other areas less affordable for, regular working class folk. But so far, yes, I am happy that the meeting seemed to have went really well. And that's really all I have to say about it. I don't plan on making a whole video about that. If it ended up being a shit show, I probably would make a video about that, but don't have any plans of doing that though. Unless I think of something I want to talk about in a whole video in regards to that meeting, but we'll see. Uh, Hello, EcoPunk. And yeah, I remember January 1st like it was yesterday. Fun times. Well, we're about to enter January 1st before we know it. It's less than 2 months away. Less than 2 months left of this year. Can you believe it? I maintain that 2025, in terms of my personal life, and, I'm speaking purely from my own experience, of course. 2025 really wasn't that bad. Kind of a nothing burger year. I mean, I'll take nothing burger over, a dreadful year like last year or 2020. More so last year, though. Hello, Luna. I'm going to visit family on Thanksgiving during the day and then leave for home that same night. I'm assuming that family lives relatively close. My uncle from Jersey used to come here, I mean, every Thanksgiving when my grandmother was still alive. He hasn't come for Thanksgiving since she passed away. He is the hyper conservative uncle. And, I mentioned him a few videos ago. I don't talk politics around him because I don't have to deal with them all that much. I only see him a couple of times a year at most, and that's it. So I don't think it's really worth getting into a heated political argument with him. But not like he abides by that same uh frame of mind though, because he lives and breathes his conservative politics, and he's gone into spats with my two other uncles before, and my mother, who are all of them are Democrats. Well, my one uncle who lives with me, the one that has since had a stroke, before the stroke, well, I mean, post stroke, he hasn't brought up politics at all, but before the stroke, I don't know. He was kind of weird. He was very conspiracy brained. He liked Alex Jones and all that, but he wasn't like some hardline right winger either. I don't even know if he's ever voted. I don't think he really gave that much of a shit about politics, to the extent that he would vote for a candidate. He- I don't know. He was always just kind of very incoherent when it came to politics, but I think he was at least, like, I don't know, a centrist Democrat, or I don't know if centrist is really the right word to describe him, but I don't know. I mean, I know he said he would have preferred Hillary to win over Trump back in 2016. He said that during one of the times my uncle from Jersey visited, and that caused my Jersey uncle to start shouting at him. He's kind of an enigma politically. At least he was before the stroke. I don't know what the fuck his political beliefs are now, since he hasn't brought them up at all. If he even has any political beliefs at this point, post stroke. Never been that big on Thanksgiving either. I mean, I like the spirit of the holiday, the message, be thankful for all the people you have in your life, be thankful for the good things in your life, if there are good people and good things in your life. But yeah, I can get behind all that, but the whole, like, eating dinner with family, I mean, as someone who, gets very uncomfortable in rooms with a whole bunch of people in the room with me, yeah, not really my thing. And I have some friends who have like really big Thanksgiving dinners. A whole bunch of family shows up. Some friends go to, family members who have big houses, and they're the ones who host Thanksgiving dinner, and like whole bunch of family comes over. And that never really was appealing to me. The only time a room full of people, the only time I'm fine being in a room jam packed with people is when I'm high. That tends to calm my nerves, sedate me a bit. That's how I was always able to handle the parties I went to as a teenager because of the weed. It would help calm my nerves. It, you know, pot has always been really good for my anxiety. Hello, Gorilla with internet access. How are you doing? The thing I like the most about Thanksgiving is the food my family cooks. Yeah, my uncle used to well up until just last year he did he was the one who cooked Thanksgiving dinner. It used to be him and my grandmother, but in my grandmother's last few years, she didn't really have the energy to, cook that much. So it would be mainly my uncle and my grandmother helping out, here and there before she would have to sit down because her legs would start bothering her. But no, he's a good cook. He's kind of the cook in the house. He makes dinner, not every night or anything. A lot of nights we just, either have nothing for dinner or we'll just like order takeout, like we order a pizza or Chinese food or whatever. But no, he cooks at least like twice a week. I can't cook for shit. Well, my father has always kind of like tried to like goad me into cooking, and he said, he says cooking is really simple. All you have to do is just follow a recipe, really. Maybe I'll try my hand at cooking one of these days. I don't know. Nothing I'm too terribly interested in. How's worst YouTubers of 2025 going? Well, I haven't even started making that video. I don't begin making those videos until December. So soon I do have, I think I have 10 YouTubers compiled. I have it in my notes app right here. Worst YouTubers 2025. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, exactly 10 people. Um, though this isn't like the final list or anything. I usually like, throughout the year I compile YouTubers I think would make good contenders for the worst YouTubers video at the end of the year, and then I make another list around late November, December, deciding the order and what YouTubers I want to put in the video definitely. Haven't really thought of a dishonorable mention though. The video will probably have one. Though I think there are some worst YouTubers videos I've made that don't have the dishonorable mention at the end, I believe. Especially my grandmother's corn pudding. My grandma used to like pudding. She didn't make pudding, but she did really like to have pudding. 2025 has been a better year for me so far. Yeah, same. I mean, I see a lot of people talk about how this year is yet another miserable year, and I mean, I'm not gonna like knock them because one's one person could be having the best year of their life, and another person could be having, the worst year of their life. It all comes down to, different experiences, different perspectives, but I'm talking like purely in terms of my personal life. 2025 really hasn't been that bad. I mean, it hasn't been like amazing either, but I mean, could be a lot worse. 2024 has shown me that it could indeed be a lot worse, and to a slightly lesser extent, 2020. Last November, December, and January were nice months. Hope 2026 is a good year too. I hope so too. I really hope so too. 2020 sucked for everyone. If the pandemic wasn't bad enough, the anti-vax conspiracies were just as annoying. Yeah, 2020, I mean, well, in terms of my personal life, I mean, the worst thing to ever happen in my life thus far, at least, was my grandmother passing away, my maternal grandmother. Um, so yeah, that puts 2020 like at the fucking bottom or near the bottom of when it comes to like, years of my life. But yeah, the pandemic really didn't do that year any favors. I've said it time and time again, the whole quarantine shit, didn't mind that because I've never been one to really leave the house much anyway, so wasn't really much of a lifestyle change to me. But I do have some friends, who I talked to at the time, and most of them I still talk to now, who were really impacted by the quarantine. They were the social butterflies, or maybe not social butterflies, but they liked face to face interaction and going out a lot more than I do. And hunker all of a sudden having to hunker down and be at home all day, that really affected their mental health. And I can understand that. Even though I'm not a social butterfly at all, humans are still naturally social creatures. We do thrive off of social interaction to some extent. Hell, I'm thriving off of social interaction in a way right now by fucking live streaming to YouTube and talking to people. I mean, virtually, yes, but still, I am interacting with people right now, and I'm enjoying it because, again, I am naturally a social creature, despite you know, liking very, liking social interaction and so in small bursts, but still, to an extent, I do like social interaction, and every human is like that. So, having to, all of a sudden change that. And, there are plenty of people who during the pandemic they lived alone, so they didn't have anyone to, really interact with. Um, I was lucky, I had my mother, my two uncles, and my grandmother was still alive, during the first few months of the pandemic. So, I wasn't like all alone, and, I didn't have anyone to interact with. I got off pretty lucky in that regard. But, you know, 2020, the whole quarantine was really difficult for a lot of people. And this is not me saying, we shouldn't have done the quarantine. I think, it was important when it came to like public safety and, trying to contain a fucking virus that was ravaging the world. But, you also can't forget that, that shit could also really fuck with someone's psyche. You can't lose sight of that. Lost my place. Happens every stream. Here we go. But unfortunately, my mom's cancer from late 2017 came back and she's going for surgery on December 5th. Oh, wow, I'm very sorry. Jesus. That's rough. I wish your mom the best of luck. My mother is going through, well, I'm nothing compared to your mother. I'm not trying to like say that, but my mom has had her share of health struggles. She had to have her gallbladder removed last year. She's had her issues with carpal tunnel 2 years ago. I think September, October of 2023. She took off from work for a while because she was feeling pretty under the weather, and she had a doctor's appointment scheduled already. But she woke up one day with like her hand completely numb, and obviously, that was cause for concern because what if she was having a heart attack? And I woke up to my uncle telling me, "Oh, your mom woke up with a numb hand and she went to the hospital." And I was like, "Holy shit." I spent like 2 hours panicking, wondering whether or not she had a heart attack and if she was going to be okay. But thankfully, she was fine. Nothing, life threatening. Again, she had carpal tunnel and that was making her hand act up. Um, and just Just a week ago, my mother went to a doctor's appointment, and she was told she has a fatty liver. Nothing life threatening. Just they just told her, she has to watch her diet. Nothing that's extremely concerning, but still something obviously she has to be on top of. But yeah, I really hope your mother is okay. Cancer is very scary because anyone I live with at any time could get cancer, especially since my family has especially my mother's side of the family has a very, very long history with cancer. Having a predisposition to it is very scary, especially since no, I could very well get cancer one day. So my grandmother passed away, and my grandmother, that wasn't her first rodeo with cancer. She had cancer back in 2005. I'm too young to remember. Well, I mean, I remember when she was going to the hospital and she was having, some type of health issues that I didn't know about back then. I didn't really know what cancer was back then. But yeah, I mean, she thankfully beat it back then, but obviously it came back, and unfortunately, she succumbed to it the second time around. I fucking hate cancer so much. After she recovers, then we're gonna start working on moving, hopefully. Oh well, best of luck with the move. It's funny, I know people who have moved multiple times in their life, some online, some in real life. Um, and meanwhile, I've lived in the same house my entire life, and I like this house. I'm not complaining. I like where I live. For New York, for New York City, it's pretty quiet here, and I mean, I live in a nice little cul-de-sac. We don't have a lot of those in NYC either. Well, we have a couple in this area, but I know on average there's not a whole lot of cul-de-sacs here in NYC, from what I've heard. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm not complaining about the area I live in. It's just that I find it very, I guess, interesting, to hear about people, to hear about the moving process, and there are people I know, like I just said, that have moved multiple times in their life. I know people who have moved, to different towns, or I have one friend who lived here in NYC, and then shortly after we graduated high school, or not shortly after, maybe like 3 years after we graduated, they moved to Long Island. Not deep into Long Island. They're still relatively close to where they were previously. Um, I kind of know one person who moved out of state. I was never too close to her or anything. She was more like someone I just knew because I knew other people who were friends with her. She moved to Boston um, last year. She works with Lego, I heard. The company, Lego. I don't know much about what she does though, or her position. But that's really cool. And I've met people online who have moved, cross countries, some to even different countries. I'm like, how the fuck do you do it? I'm gonna register for the spring semester of college sometime after Thanksgiving. Best of luck with your college education. I got my bachelor's 2 years ago. Unfortunately, the college, I mean, not to discourage you or anything, but college doesn't get you, at least these days, as far as you would like it to take you. Just speaking firsthand on that. Have yet to hold down anything stable. Nothing that I could live off of at least. I don't like going too in depth when it comes to my employment or anything because I don't think that's really much of the internet's business. But I've had online jobs. Nothing like obviously nothing too, I guess, strenuous or time consuming. Shit that's flexible that pays moderately well, but nothing that I could like live independently off of or anything, or anything that I'm gonna live off of for the rest of my life. But it gets me by. It has gotten me by, I should say. The manager of that apartment complex called yesterday and said there would be an apartment ready by Christmas, but we wouldn't be ready. Yeah, I mean, what's going on with your mother obviously takes priority over moving. To be honest, I don't know if I'll ever do weed again. A few months ago, I had a weed infused drink and had the worst panic attack of all time. Yeah, I mean, I've said it before. Not every experience I've had with weed has been positive. I used to talk up weed a lot back when I was a teenager, but I've had weed induced panic attacks before, and those were not fun at all. But for me, the pros vastly outweigh the cons. Way more. Uh, it helps with my nerves way more often than not. So that's why. I mean, I'm not a regular smoker or anything. You know, I'm more of someone who just, smokes weed in a social setting when I'm with friends. It's nothing that I like, do on a daily basis or anything. I can cook some things like pasta and meat. Cool. When I was a kid, my dad never cooked. I don't think he even knew shit about cooking, but when I started talking to him after my grandmother passed away, when I got back into contact with him, he cooks pretty much every night. He cooks his own meals, he cooks his own dinner, I should say. I mean, I don't know about every single night. I mean, I'm sure like you know, he orders food from time to time, but he said much prefers, cooking his own meals as opposed to, having to go out and buy food for dinner or going to a restaurant or ordering takeout. Said it's more convenient for him. Speaking of cooking, I learned to make my own meatballs a couple of weeks ago. That's nice. Maybe I should take up cooking. I mean, I've heard about, the pros of being able to cook your own meals and I mean, like I said, from my father, but in general, I do know some people who can cook for themselves, and they say it removes quite a bit of the hassle of trying to figure out what exactly you want to buy or n- trying to figure out what restaurant you want to go to or things like that. Dishonorable mention me. Do you even make your own content? I lost my place again. Fucking chat sometimes jumps to the bottom. 2025 for social media sucked ass. Doesn't every year suck ass for social media? Every social media platform is like a rage bait factory at this point, feeding off negativity, feeding off people, getting angry at misleading headlines and shit like that. I mean, you know, I try to limit my usage of social media that isn't like, Discord or YouTube or like Instagram DMs if you want to count that. But I mean, I fucking ditched Twitter a year ago. um, Even removing like, the whole, the site being a fascist hellhole at this point, owned by a fucking fascist. Twitter for a long time was just not good for my mental health. People always getting mad at something, people sharing, people having the most dumb fucking opinions, people sharing the most obvious fake news stories. It was just negativity after negativity after negativity in my feed. And I'm like, it's really not worth keeping this shit around anymore. I still, my Twitter profile still exists. It's still public. People can follow it. You're not going to get any fucking content on that profile ever again, more than likely. But, I still keep it around in case I ever like need it or anything. But yeah, I've not looked at Twitter in a long time. I have no desire to look at Twitter. Um, and I think I'm much better off without it. Twitter is easily, well, I mean, I don't know if it's easily the most toxic platform, but probably is at this point. But for me, out of all the platforms I'm on, it was easily the most toxic. Um, it's like that fucking site is designed to like push shit that'll get the most like visceral negative reaction out of you. And I got to a point where I'm like, I really don't need this in my life. It's really not doing anything for my mental health besides being a detriment to my mental health. So fuck keeping this shit around. Instagram for me, I only just follow really people I know in my real life and some musicians and some YouTubers I like here and there, but it's mainly just, a platform I use to talk to real life friends. And even then I don't really look at my Instagram. Well, I do look at my Instagram feed, but I don't really pay much attention outside of to Instagram outside of what, my my personal my friends in my personal life post and like their own regular posts, or I look at their stories. And they're just posting about shit going on in their lives, wholesome shit like that. Nothing, like, that would be bad for my mental health or anything. But yeah, social media in general, and this includes YouTube too, is just bad. Like, I mean, call me a hypocrite all you want, because here I am with a YouTube channel that I post onto regularly for the last 11 years. So even I'm not free of social media, obviously, but you know, YouTube, I mean, I like watching a lot of content on this website, content that I know I'll enjoy. I hardly ever go out of my way to watch videos I know I don't like, or videos by creators I don't like, because I don't find that to be a productive usage of my time. Unless, of course, there's like ongoing drama I'm interested in. But aside from that, I'm not one to really keep tabs on people I don't like who aren't, contributing to any like real world broad harm. An Undertale Deltarune creator named Shay got called out for some really disgusting shit recently. Sibbles Kibbles GD talked about some of it on her channel and linked to Google Docs with chat logs. I have no idea about any of this, but maybe I'll look into it. If this person is a YouTuber, then maybe maybe they'd make a good addition for my list at the end of the year. I used to go out and socialize almost every day during my childhood, especially 2014, 2017 to 18. Lots of crazy shit went down back then. Yeah, I have noticed that I was a lot more social during my childhood. I think that's the case for a lot of people. Like when you're a kid, obviously, I mean, I shouldn't speak broadly, but I think on average, you're a lot less anxious, a lot less, cautious about how you'll come off in front of other people. So, it gave you more of an incentive to be social because you didn't really care, at least, compared to how you are as an adult about how, you would appear in front of other people. That's pretty much how I was when I was a kid. I mean, I was still a lot more reserved and anxious than, a lot of other kids in my classes, but I was still noticeably more social as a child than I am now. These days, I'm a lot more self-conscious. Oh, what if I make the wrong first impression? Or what if I come off this way? What if I come off that way? And shit like that, I didn't really think about too much as a kid. I mean, I did to an extent, but not as much as I do now. So I can understand why you were more social back then. Hello, Sean McIntosh. How are you doing? I've always read introversion and extroversion as a spectrum rather than types because even introverts like to talk to people on occasion, and extroverts need time to their own sometimes. Yeah, I've heard that too. I've read a little bit. Um, I've read some stuff that has reiterated that point, and I understand it. Like I said, humans are social creatures. Even the most introverted, I hate talking to people person out there, I'm sure to an extent, likes interacting with people. Maybe not often at all, but no one has ever lived a life in total seclusion. At least I don't think. Maybe some edge cases here and there, but you know, there's a reason, why the trope, like the cliche, like, "Ooh, someone is stuck on an island by themselves and they start going crazy," thing exists because that's true. If you're in total isolation, never interacting with a single person for an extended period of time, that is, even if you detest social interaction, that is going to get to you eventually because naturally we do thrive off of interaction to an extent. Again, I am introverted as fuck. I have horrible social anxiety, but I still do like talking to people here and there. I have family that I live with that I talk to on a daily basis. I have friends I talk to. Not, not every day face to face. I do talk to them, on nearly a daily basis on my phone. But I do like interacting with people. Again, I'm doing a fucking live stream on YouTube. There's a whole live chat interacting with me. I like talking to people virtually, virtually or face to face. Well, maybe I'm more comfortable, talking to people virtually, but you get my point. And the opposite is true. People who are social butterflies, they thrive off social interaction. There are still times where even those people need a break from social interaction and want to take time to themselves. No one could be social 24/7 all the time. Everyone needs some time to themselves. That's only healthy. It's just interesting how that all that works. There's always everything just needs a balance. Can't have too much of one thing. Unfortunately, addiction, depression, and cancer runs in my family. Woo. I do have some people in my mother's side of the family and my father's side of the family who also suffer with depression, but I don't know if it's like something that runs in the family. Like my father, he suffers with depression, and I have depression. Well, he also has bipolar disorder, and I don't, so I didn't get that from him or anything. But, I do notice a lot of similarities when it comes to, my personality and my father's, and also our temperament. I tend to be kind of a hothead, very impatient person. Um, I try my best not to, blow up at people or anything. But my father, oh God, I've seen him blow up at people plenty of times during my childhood. So I kind of like inherited that. Um, Addiction, though, very common in my father's side of the family. My father suffered with addiction to certain substances. I'll just leave it at that. I have an uncle. I have some uncles on my father's side of the family, or not uncles. I mean, just family members in general on my father's side of the family who have struggled with alcohol addiction. And that's partly why I refuse to touch alcohol. I have no interest in trying alcohol. I don't drink shit like beer. Ugh, beer just sounds gross to me. But I do have an uncle on my father's side of the family who, well, not a blood related uncle, but still, um, who suffered from alcohol addiction for years, and he finally kicked it. Like, well, before I got back in touch with my father's side of the family, I think he told me he kicked alcohol addiction around 2018, 2019 ish. So, not long before I got back in touch with that side of the family. And, he told me, though, like, how horrible alcohol addiction, or really just addiction in general, can be. I'm like, yeah, I believe you. I have no interest in drinking myself. And of course, my father has been addicted to cigarettes since pretty much since he was a child. Um, I think he said he first started smoking when he was 12. That was back when, people were a lot more lax and you could like go down to your local drugstore as a kid and buy a pack of smokes and say, "Oh, I'm buying it for my parents," when, they're really not. Um, and my father has not stopped smoking since. He is my number one reason for never wanting to try a cigarette myself. He has tried so many times throughout his life, so many times throughout my life. There have even been times where he told me when I was a kid, "I'm gonna quit smoking for you," only for him to go back to smoking eventually. He even battled cancer a decade ago. He beat cancer, thankfully. It was lung cancer due to, him being a fucking chimney his whole life. And, for a while after he beat cancer, he downgraded to vape. And I remember one of the last times I talked to him before I got back in touch with him in 2020, he told me, "Oh, eventually I'm going to just quit smoking altogether." And by the time I talked to him 5 years later in 2020, when I got back in touch with him, he was right back to smoking cigarettes. Never stopped. Well, he did stop for a time, but he went right back to smoking cigarettes. So, if contracting lung cancer and beating it, and it was a pretty ugly, horrible battle for him. There was even one point where he nearly fucking died in the hospital. I'm not going to go in huge detail over that, but if all of that was not enough to make him want to kick the smoking, he is never going to fucking stop smoking. He is going to be a chimney until he dies, and that's honestly that's probably going to be what kills him. But observing how strong addiction can be, and even the most glaring, horrible consequences of your addiction not being enough to deter you from, or motivate you, I mean, to kick your addiction. No interest in trying out cigarettes. Absolutely zero. Last November, my last surviving cat had to be euthanized due to cancer and other health problems. I still miss her dearly. I'm very sorry. It's horrible. I just had a cat named Timmy. Yes, Timmy was a girl. She was 17 years old. She passed away in September. Um, my the vet, my uncle took her to. Well, she was having her own health problems for like a month before she passed away. She had to be euthanized, like your cat. Um, she got to a point where her legs kind of gave out on her. She couldn't go up the stairs anymore. I mean, she tried, but like she'd be in the middle of going down the stairs and then she'd start crying, and it was very heartbreaking. My uncle took her to the vet shortly after that. And at first, the vet just said, well, she's 17 years old. Her limbs could be, her limbs are obviously getting weaker, but she's still in relatively good shape. So we're not going to put her down. But a few weeks later, her health took a very sharp decline, and it got to a point where the vet was like, "Yeah, she's very likely suffering, I think, liver failure." So yeah, the only humane thing left to do for her is to put her down, and that's exactly what my uncle did. Uh, he did pay to, receive her ashes, and now we have her ashes on display with Charlie's ashes in a china closet in the living room downstairs. Now, it's just my cat Theo that's left of the OG 3 from, or at least the 3 cats we had from that were birthed by Debbie, a cat that passed away, uh, back in 2019 that we had. That she was very close to my Debbie, I mean, was very close to my grandmother, and my grandmother was devastated when Debbie passed away. But yeah, Debbie birthed Charlie, Timmy, and Theo, and now it's just Theo that's left. He is 16. He was born a year after Charlie and Timmy. Charlie and Timmy were born in the same litter. I like to think, if there is something after this life, that Charlie and Timmy have reunited, because when they were kittens, they were inseparable from each other. I even posted a video on my not a video, a photo on my community tab on this channel, a picture my uncle took back when Charlie and Timmy were kittens of them together. I do have other pictures of Charlie and Timmy as kittens on a very old camera I have in one of my cabinets, but I don't have the charger for it, unfortunately. Could probably just buy a USB cable I could plug into, but maybe someday. I'd like to see those pictures again. But yeah, very sorry about your cat. I know how it feels. It's gonna be 2 years soon since Charlie passed away, January 4th of 2024. Cannot believe it's gonna be almost 2 years since he passed away. Wow. I used to love showing off Charlie a lot on this channel. I remember when Charlie passed away shortly after, I was watching all the videos, or all the videos I remember at least, that I had Charlie in them, and, you know, saying shit like, "Ooh, Charlie's the greatest cat in the world." That was kind of a running joke on my channel back in 2015. And, I was crying a bit watching that. But yeah, it's unfortunate, these beautiful, innocent little creatures have relatively short lives, and, you know, it's horrible that, they eventually have to succumb to death, succumb to whatever ailment they might contract. Anyway, it's getting a little too depressing. Not to throw shade to the person who brought up that their cat passed away or anything. Sometimes I'll watch 4K walk videos of Times Square, always crowded and noisy. Well, not all of NYC is like that. I remember I was in a voice call on Discord. Actually, it was a YouTuber I enjoy watching, Undertaker Freak. I was in a call in his Discord server some years ago. maybe like 5 years ago, something like that. Or maybe it was even mine. I don't know. But we're talking about me and a few others were talking about like places we live, and then I brought up NYC, and I remember he was like, "Oh yeah, that's right. You live in NYC. How do you do it?" Like, lived here my whole life. This is all I know, and like, not all of NYC is Manhattan. The tall buildings and noisy streets. That's kind of a perception that people who have never been in NYC at all have of NYC. That it's like all of it is like Manhattan. And I live in a pretty quiet neighborhood. I mean, quiet at least compared to how a lot of NYC is. I mean, obviously you still get the cars going by and the buses and all that, motorcycles even, but um no, it's compared to how loud some other parts of NYC are. It's very quiet here, and I'm not complaining. Again, I like where I live. I mean, maybe, maybe I don't like a lot of the people in my area, very Trump friendly area, but whatever. I hardly interact with my neighbors. I've heard one of my family who I've heard of one of my family who moved from Florida to Alaska. Alaska. What made them want to go there? Did they get a job there or something? Or yeah, I mean, Alaska's not really on my bucket list of places to go. Most certainly not to move to. Florida most certainly isn't on that bucket list either. Not that I have any interest in moving anywhere. Again, I have no complaints about where I live currently, but yeah, Florida, ooh. Yeah, I'd especially not want to go there. I mean, just a few months ago, they got rid of vaccine mandates. Yeah, I can't wait for all the news stories of outbreaks originating from school children down in Florida. Can't wait for the big measles comeback. I mean, it's already been happening, and polio and all that shit. Ugh, shithole state. Ah, the chat fucking jumped down again. I think this is where I left off. Yeah, college doesn't prepare you for work, unfortunately, at least in my experience. Yeah, I mean, I'm still glad I have the degree. It helps, at least presumably. But yeah, I try to look. And, it's not like I'm just doing nothing, but I try to look for more sustainable work. Again, I like what I have already. Something with that's all online, incredibly flexible hours. I pretty much can work whenever the fuck I want. But yeah, it's nothing to live off of, nothing sustainable long term. I've tried reaching out to like more tenable, more sustainable jobs, job listings I come across on Google, and I'm like, oh, this sounds really good. I want to submit my resume, and I either get completely fucking ghosted or told, oh, we're thanks for the resume, but we're not looking for anyone right now, or we'll get back to you, and then never fucking hear from them again. Yeah. Fuck this job market. So stressful. My mom might be losing her job. Her company got bought out by a bigger company that really likes AI. And yeah, she might get squeezed out of her position. So that's fun. Hopefully, I'll find a better job once we move, but I've been able to survive the past 2 years. Well, I mean, I make my own money, but yeah, I'm still incredibly thankful that I live in a house with three other people who also make money. So, obviously, again, I'm not complaining about the amount of money I make right now. It's decent, but again, it's nothing that I could like live independently off of. I haven't used Twitter since May 2022. We'll never go back. No interest in going back either. Well, I quit Twitter way after you did, and shortly after the election. Well, even before the election, I was hardly posting on Twitter anymore. I already had Blue Sky and I was posting on that. But when it came to just even looking at Twitter, completely gave up on that after the election. I don't even know much about current day Twitter, how worse it's gotten or how different it is, and I have no interest in finding out. The most I see of Twitter just it's just stupid posts that people share in my Discord server or what I come across on Reddit. A bit of news, sort of. Did you hear about Rockstar GTA Studio firing a bunch of union workers? Yes, I have heard a little bit about that, and yes, that is shitty, extremely shitty. I also heard GTA was pushed again, though that should really be a surprise to no one. I didn't think the game would actually be coming out in in May next May. But yeah, I mean, greedy company being a fucking greedy company, firing workers who want to demand better working conditions, better pay. Don't want that because that means we can't make as much money as we were already making. Oh, what a tragedy. Instagram reels wild. Yeah, I don't pay attention much to. Again, I don't pay attention much to Instagram outside of what my friends post, and I think my mental health is better off. There's an anti woke person on Twitter who LARPs as a Japanese man and Japanese nationalist, even though he isn't Japanese, nor does he live in Japan. Aren't there also Twitter accounts who like posture themselves as like based fucking Chad, white European, Aryan, or whatever? And then it ends up being like some person from India being behind the account. I heard there's been a lot of like right wing rage bait accounts coming from India because apparently like you could actually live off of Twitter money in India. So a lot of people there are just making like these rage bait accounts and posting doing the whole right wing grift for money because they can actually make a living off of that over there. If only we could make that easy money in the here in the States. Well, I mean you can, but it's considerably easier there, I'd imagine. Too bad. I stick by principles to a fault because I could make a lot of money being a grifter, but yeah, no, fuck that. That's just disgusting. Is there any medication you could take to help with your anxiety? I started a new medication this year, and it has helped quite a bit. I'm not currently on any medication, but I might go on medication eventually, though. Um, I might start seeing um, a psychologist. You're lucky you didn't get bipolar. It's very genetic. Yeah, I know. I've never been diagnosed with bipolar. I don't identify with any, well, really any of the symptoms, or most of the symptoms at least, of bipolar disorder that I've read about. It's just my dad who suffers with it. And I don't know if my grandfather did. I mean, he died way back in 1980. And, obviously, bipolar disorder. I mean, people already knew about the disorder, I'd imagine, back then. But, obviously, I don't think as many people were diagnosed with it back then, or it was really taken seriously as much as it is now back then. Same thing with a lot of other mental health disorders. But I wouldn't be surprised if my grandfather suffered with bipolar disorder as well, my paternal grandfather. Um, from the stories I've heard about him, and he was he was not a good person. I'll just leave it at that. Not to say that bipolar disorder makes you a bad person, but the stories I've heard about him, and when it came to like his mood and such, it kind of did line up with what I've heard about bipolar disorder. But no, it's something that I'm pretty sure I have dodged. I've never been diagnosed with it. Obviously, if you don't have a diagnosis for something, that doesn't definitively mean you don't have it. But on top of that, I've read up about symptoms of bipolar disorder. Don't really identify with really any of it, or at least a vast majority of it. I've lost my temper on annoying people a lot in my life too. Well, yeah, bad temper is something I do have. Not to the extent my father has it, but yes, I do have. I can be irritable. Um, well, I'm able to control it to an extent. It's not that I, randomly blow up at people on a regular basis or anything, but I find myself in many instances getting like really easily annoyed, especially if someone like doesn't hear something that I say and I have to repeat myself a couple of times. I kind of like clench up and I'm like, I really don't feel like fucking repeating myself again, but they're not being annoying, they're not being rude, so I shouldn't be rude back. But little things like that can really irritate me easily. Or, if I'm like playing a video game and I'm at a part that really pisses me off, I can sometimes like bash the table really hard in frustration. My mom is a heavy smoker too and gets really close to quitting, then goes right back up again. Yeah, my father is exactly the same way. Oh, I'm gonna quit smoking. I'm quitting for you. I'm gonna kick tomorrow. Only to never, only to never actually stop smoking. Or he stops smoking for a time and then goes right back to the habit. Again, after observing that for years on end and knowing just how consumed by his cigarette addiction he is, I have no interest in trying cigarettes for myself. And again, I have no interest in alcohol either, uh, since alcoholism is also something that quite a few family members of mine on my father's side have struggled with. I don't know why alcohol is so glorified, honestly. Especially shit like beer. Just sounds disgusting to me. Both of my parents smoke, and my father is a horrible alcoholic. I'll never drink in my life. Yeah. One of the one of the best ways to deter you from addictive substances is having people in your life hooked on said substances and just seeing firsthand how their addiction can, hinder their lives. At least that's how it is for me. I've observed firsthand what alcohol and cigarette addiction and drug addiction can do to you. And it's motivated me to keep away from, harmful substances like that. R.I.P. Timmy and Charlie. Yeah, it sucks losing them. It sucks in general. Well, I shouldn't say sucks, but it's hard having a pet that's up there in years because sooner rather than later they're gonna pass away, and it doesn't matter if they live another 30 years. You're never ready for that day, but especially when they're up there in years, that day is coming sooner rather than later, and I'm just not ready to let go of them. That's how I was with Charlie the last few years, especially after he turned 12. I think that's when a cat is considered a super senior. And yeah, I was like, yep, Charlie is old. I mean, obviously, I still love him a lot. I cherished him, and I was hoping that he would have lived longer than 15. But even if he lived to fucking 20 years old, 21 years old, him dying would still be just as hard as it was when he did actually pass away at age 15. He was just a few months away from turning 16. His birthday and Timmy's birthday were April 1st of all days. It was especially hard since, I literally watched Charlie be born. I think Timmy is older than Charlie by just a few minutes because I don't remember seeing Timmy be born. But I did watch Charlie being birthed, and you know that just made the connection even deeper. Literally being by his side, being his friend since he exited the womb. Yeah, it just sucks, losing a pet, especially one you were so close to. Hey Mikey, hello Olin, how are you doing? I still remember the Super Charlie iMovie trailer you made years ago. I used to watch it a lot with my friends. We loved it. Thank you. I don't think I've ever heard any story of people like gathering their friends to watch a video of mine, so that's flattering, especially since it's a video that would feature Charlie in it. Yeah, I do remember making that video, and that's one of the videos I watched after Charlie passed away, and it was kind of hard watching that in light of him passing away. And all the other appearances he made on my channel. Well, I don't remember every single video he appeared in, but the ones I do remember off the top of my head were, of course, the one you just mentioned. There were some Miiverse videos I featured him in, like the one where I talked about that update, where Miiverse was going to ban. He was going to, that update that was all about every account tied to a certain Wii U getting banned off of Miiverse if one account gets banned. I remember featuring Charlie at the end of that, and I was like, "You don't want to upset Charlie," or something like that. Um, a whole bunch of other videos he was in that I saw after he passed away. Yeah, I loved him. Didn't know back then. I didn't want to waste an opportunity to show him on camera. So many of my old video, not even my old videos, so many videos up until he passed away, even I made with him right next to me. Like, it's almost like he knew I was gonna record a video because so many times I would go into my room, you know, about to upload a video, and then Charlie would jump on my bed right before I closed the door, and then he'd sit down next to me, and I just, start yapping about whatever I want to talk about in a video, and I'd be petting him while talking. I've done that a few times with my cat Pink, but she doesn't stay in my room all that much. She mostly likes to look out my window, which is fine, obviously. It wasn't. I never thought of Pink as being a direct replacement of Charlie, and Pink has to act exactly like Charlie did, because we're talking about you know a living being, not just an object to replace another object. But sometimes she does stay in the bed with me, and I pet her, and I think a few times she stayed while I made some videos, but nowhere near to the extent, like with Charlie, where damn near every time I recorded a video, he'd be next to me. That's good. Life is way better without anxiety shit. I assume you're referring to me cutting Twitter out of my life. Yeah, I'm better off without that garbage. Again, it's almost like that platform is designed to like shove a bunch of shit you don't like in your face. It knows you're not going to like into your face. And I mean, that's pretty much how how that platform thrives. People getting angry at shit and arguing with people and all that. And again, when you see throughout the years, when you witness too much of that shit, you just want to cut it out of your life. Or at least that's the healthy thing to do. A lot of people just thrive off of that, but not me. Alcohol addiction has ruined my father in many ways. I have many shitty stories throughout the past 2 years. I have plenty of shitty stories about my father from my childhood that I thought I would never forgive him for, but I did. Um, Really, if it wasn't for my grandmother pushing me, even up until just before she died, to get back in touch with him, I probably would not have gotten back in touch with him and be able to, forgive him for a lot of the shit that, I've witnessed and a lot of the shit he said and done during my childhood. But I'm glad I did actually reach out to him and, honor what my grandmother wanted. I remember the last Father's Day she was alive, she was telling me to contact my father, but I didn't want to. And it took her passing away for me to finally contact him. And again, I'm glad I did. I'm glad I, have didn't hold on to the negative feelings I had for him. I mean that's not to say everyone should do that. If you never want to be in contact with a parent or both of your parents ever again, that's obviously up to you and something that should be respected. If that's something you genuinely don't want to do, but for me personally, holding on to a lifelong grudge isn't healthy, and so I just wanted to make amends with him or try to make amends at least. And if he didn't want to, like, if he was gonna if the conversation after my grandmother passed away went very differently, like, he was all pissed off and saying, "Oh, I haven't talked to you in 5 years," and all that, being all hung up on the fact that we haven't talked for so long and being pissed off over that, then yeah, I probably would have just been like, I tried. But no, we had a pretty good conversation, and we have talked regularly since. And I was able to let go of the negative feelings I had surrounding him. And again, I'm very glad I was able to, put all that negative shit aside. It's healthier than, again, holding on to a grudge, at least for me. Again, if you have any family members, be it your parents or whatever, that you never want to speak to again for any valid reason, then I'm not going to judge you or say that's something you should stop doing. But again, me personally, I think the more healthy thing was to just, put those feelings aside. And it ended up, working out in the long run. Tried alcohol-free beer once, which was apparently supposed to taste similar to beer minus the alcohol. Smelt it, tried a sip of it, hated it. If I don't like the fake thing, won't like the real thing. Yeah, there's alcohol-free beer too, and you're far from the only person I've heard that has said that, it's disgusting. But yeah, I have no interest in trying alcohol-free beer either. I have no interest in trying beer in general. Again, it just sounds fucking gross. And again, quite a bit of my family on my father's side have struggled with alcohol addiction. Beer specifically, they couldn't get enough of. And that has deterred me from even wanting to try a sip of beer. No, thank you. Wearing a Courage the Cowardly Dog shirt. Well, I've worn the shirt on stream several times, I believe. Had to change my position, got really uncomfortable. But what was I gonna say? Something about beer. I forget. Oh well. It's good you may go on medication to help with anxiety. I might. Nothing is set in stone, but I might be talking to someone soon. Um, again, a professional. Me and my father used to have some really great times in 2017 to 18 when he wasn't a straight up addict. Yeah, addiction could really ruin a person, change them into something they weren't before. I mean, there are people who, of course, have their share of problems even before addiction, but I've heard plenty of horror stories about how from people who know people who have struggled with addiction, who have said that prior to the addiction, they were a pretty reasonable, normal person, and then after the addiction, they were just all irrational, completely different in a negative way compared to how they were before. That shit can just like consume you and change you for the worse. Courage is a great show. Indeed, it is easily my favorite cartoon of all time. Sucks they took it off HBO Max. They took it off like what, a month or two ago. Ugh. Now I have to buy the complete series on DVD whenever I feel like rewatching the show again, and I usually rewatch it at least once a year. They completely decimated the Cartoon Network catalog off of HBO Max. I don't think a single Cartoon Network show remains on the platform, right? I think Courage was actually the last one. I mean, I could be wrong. Fucking Discovery and their hate boner for anything animated. Or really the CEO more specifically. He seems to like really fucking hate animated shows for whatever reason. It sucks because HBO Max, I mean, was once my favorite streaming service. I mean, to an extent, it still is. The HBO originals, a lot of those are my favorite shows of all time. But, it used to be a really, really good platform with the HBO stuff, Cartoon Network, and a whole bunch of other Warner Bros. Shit. It was great, but Discovery swooped in and decided, oh, it's more lucrative to take a whole bunch of content off the platform, tax write offs, or, you know, um, licensing deals and all that shit. I wanted to watch the Sopranos prequel movie recently as well. Recently, also did my yearly rewatch of The Sopranos, my favorite show of all time, only to find out they took that movie off of HBO Max. Now, it wasn't a great movie by any means, but I still wanted to watch it since I watched the show again. But they took it off the platform. The only place I could find it was Amazon, and even then, you can't watch it with Prime. You got to pay for the movie. Ugh. So I was like, yeah, fuck that shit. I do have a former friend from high school that I'll probably never talk to again because he was creepy and harassing me on Instagram, had to block me on there. Oh, that sucks. I mean, I've had my share of shitty friends who I've ended up cutting off, but never any that stalked me or never any that stalked other people. Yeah, sounds like someone you're better off not having in your life. After I removed him, he constantly tried to request to follow me over and over, and I had to block him. Yeah, some people just cannot take no for an answer. They cannot handle the fact that you do not want to be around them. Like me personally, if someone signals to me that, they don't like my presence for one reason or another, I'm like, okay, I'll fuck off. But some people, they just cannot handle that. They think constantly fucking pressuring them to let them back into their life is going to make them be friends with them again when no, that's not the case at all. That's just going to reaffirm to the person you're trying to be friends with again that yeah, they're in the right to not be your friend because you're a fucking weirdo who cannot handle that that they don't want to associate with you anymore. And you're just kind of again reaffirming why they're better off not being your friend. Then nearly a year later, he made some spam account and tried to pester me on there. I even saw him once when I went for a walk. He tried yelling out to me, and I completely ignored him. Again, I've cut off quite a few people out of my life, but thankfully, at least I hope none of them have stalked me or tried to you know, have me add them back. I've had some spam accounts and accounts that I don't recognize at all, send me follow requests since my account on Instagram is private, and I reject all of that. Unless I know for sure who is sending me a follow request, I don't accept. Same thing with phone calls. If I don't recognize the number, unless I'm expecting a call, I don't answer. Did Courage the Cowardly Dog used to be your profile pic? Yes. I've had a few Courage the Cowardly Dog profile pics. Well, one, most obvious one being the one with him in front of a fire background. No, I didn't make that. Found that on Google years ago, and I wish I could credit whoever originally made that, but I've tried reverse image searching that picture and I can't find anything anymore. Aside from, of course, my own channel. Um, but I've also used, I know I used a few years ago the one with Muriel Possessed. That was another fun profile pic. I just like using profile pics of funny pictures I find off of Google. Like the one I have now, Patrick with a realistic, ugly looking face. I forget what SpongeBob episode that's from though. I remember when I used to always have my me as my channel profile picture, but I got tired of that in like 2017. Yeah, I think that's when I changed when I had my first profile pic that wasn't a me, which was that courage profile picture. Because I didn't think the me was representative of my channel anymore, because by that point I was done making Miiverse videos on a regular basis, and it was a topic I wanted to move away from. And I felt having that me was kind of counterintuitive and kind of gives off the impression that, Miiverse was still, the main focus, my bread and butter of the channel, when again, I was so far removed from that topic by that point. And I wanted to really disassociate from that. He even messaged me later that day. I think I saw you earlier. You looked angry. You okay? I blocked him after that. And people just cannot fucking take no for an answer. It's insane. Like, you have given, at least from what you've told me, very clear signals that you do not want this person in your life anymore, and that they try and try and try again to enter back into your life, even after you very, very clearly do not want them back in your life. For some reason, the George Carlin specials are not on HBO Max, but they are on Tubi. Did they used to be on HBO Max? I've actually never watched any of Carlin's stand up on HBO Max. I've only ever watched them on. I've only ever watched his specials and clips of specials on YouTube. Didn't HBO have a George Carlin documentary a few years ago? I remember they advertised that on the homepage. I wonder if that's still on HBO Max. Never watched it though, surprisingly, considering he's the only stand-up comic I give a shit about. There was a friend I had as a kid who was really annoying. He also thought I was cheating when I beat him in games or did the Mortal Kombat special moves. I knew a kid, I've talked about this kid before, that I knew in elementary school and middle school. He didn't go to the same high school as me. Well, I didn't really know him, as in I met him in school and we were friends in school. More so, my mom met his mom in the PTA when my mom was unemployed back when I was in elementary school because of the recession. Um, and they, his mom and my mom got along really well, and that's when they introduced, my mom introduced me to her kid. His kid, his kid, her kid was in special ed, so, and I wasn't in the special ed classes, so I didn't know him. Um, but I did go to his house a few times, and he was always just completely silent and never spoke to me. We did play games together, and I remember this was in 2013, I think. I went to his house. Well, really, my mom forced me to go to his house with her because she wanted to spend time with his mom. We were playing Nintendo Land together. I forget which game on Nintendo Land it was, but he got really pissed off that I was beating him to the point where he threw his gamepad on the floor. um, and he got, he was getting really pissed off, and his mom yelled at him, saying, be a good sport and all that. I tried being friendly with the kid. I tried talking to him, but a lot of the times he would just stay silent. And I didn't really like going to his house because of that reason. I would try to make conversation with him, and he would just not either not respond back or just respond back with one word answers. I've said this story before, but he wanted my number. He added me to his contacts list, but I completely forgot to add him back in my contacts list, and he messaged me out of the blue one day. We had each other added on the Wii U and 3DS as well. And I remember my little message in the Wii U friends list was my little status message. I mean, was "Hi, that is all," and that's exactly what he wrote to me in when he messaged me. And I fucking freaked out. I thought someone I knew. I forgot I even had him added on the Wii U, and I freaked out. I thought someone who knew me online somehow got a hold of my number, and I was originally gonna freak out and say, "Who the fuck is this?" But I just wrote calmly, "Who is this?" And then he was like, "It's your friend so and so," and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Hello." And then he didn't respond back, and supposedly he got really offended by me asking, "Who is this?" And ever since, he has not wanted anything to do with me. Oh well. He would constantly reply to my stories saying stupid shit, and then he kept spamming one of my new posts that I had made, and that was it for me. Yeah. Again, sounds like someone you're just better off not having in your life anymore. Seems like you made the right decision based on everything you've told me here. I also remember when you had the "You're Not Perfect" monster as a profile pic. Yeah, I had that as my profile pic in what, 2020, 2021, something like that. I should update my profile pic. It's been months. Well, that's up to you. I don't have any set date on when I change my profile pics. Just one day I end up getting bored of either my YouTube or my Discord profile pic and I change it. I was never one to make logos for my profile. Well, not anymore at least. I used to do that back in the day with my me, but not anymore. I just, again, just use stupid shit I find off of Google Images. I don't believe his specials have ever been on HBO Max, actually. Oh, well, I mean, at least that's something, at least, his specials weren't on HBO Max to begin with, as opposed to them um, being on the platform and then taken off eventually. They should be on the platform. That, well, a lot of his specials were HBO specials. Makes sense for them to be on the platform. Fair enough. I remember that angry old man pic you used to have. No idea who that was or where you got that from. Angry old man profile. I've had so many profile pics throughout the years. I don't even remember which one specifically you're talking about. Angry old man. One of my favorite YouTube profile pics, besides the courage one, is one that I had a few years ago of Mr. Rogers flipping off the camera, or more specifically, tall man. But still, it was funny seeing Mr. Rogers stick up the middle finger. Maybe I'll use that profile pic again. I've been thinking about using the courage profile pic again too. Maybe after this one, I don't know. I don't even know how long I'll keep this one for. Depends on when I get bored of it. New secular talk upload. Trump cucks to Zoran. Yeah, yeah. Bend the knee, kiss the ring. There's a box set of George Carlin specials. It also has the audio CD of "I Kind of Like It When a Lot of People Die." Isn't that the "I Kind of Like It When a Lot of People Die"? Wasn't that supposed to come out right after 9/11? But either it was delayed or the name was changed. I forgot to mention it was snow flurrying the other day. They're saying it's going to be an early and brutal winter. Oh, that's fun. Fuck that. Well, actually, I think last week I slept through it, so I didn't get to see it. But my uncle told me that we had some snow flurries. None of it stuck because the ground was already wet. It rained the day earlier. Um, but yeah, this is around the time we start getting snow during there were some winters where we hardly get any snow, but when if we do have a winter when it starts snowing regularly, this is around the time it starts. So yeah, not looking forward to the snow because I'm the one who has to shovel it. Ugh, fun. And I just hate the brutal cold as well. I don't like it when it's like, 20 to, it's in the, you know, the temperature is in the 20s or lower. And I know, ooh, you're being such a pansy. There's many parts in the world where it's much, much, much colder. You wouldn't even fucking last. Yes, I know. I know. You're a tough guy. Be proud of yourself if you live in any of those areas. But no, I fucking hate the cold just as much as I hate the extreme heat. Like I like a nice balance. I like it even on days like this where there is a breeze, but it's still, not too cold. Spring has my favorite type of temperature where it's not too hot or not too cold. There's that nice balance. Like I said earlier, there's always a nice, everything works, most things at least work best when there's a nice balance. And the temperature is certainly one of those things. And the weather. You know, I don't like it during the summer when it's like in the fucking 90s and it's brutally hot. The humidity is like really high and you get all disgusting and sticky. Ugh, hate all that shit. But I also hate when it's really fucking cold out, have to bundle up, wear multiple layers of clothing, and yeah, that shit is just really annoying. And shivering and all that. Yeah, I fucking hate all that shit. I just wish, all year around we just had this nice balance of it not being too hot or too cold. But alas, I don't live in a part of the world where it's like that. Well, I mean, not like that all year round. I mean, I remember the Courage pick from 2017, Good Times, and I brought it back a few years ago. Again, I might use it again someday. Really like that picture. Maybe I'll use it just every few years. I have a lot of profile pics that I really like that I wouldn't mind using again. I have them all saved in Google Photos in a folder. Again, one of my other favorite ones was the Mr. Rogers one, sticking up the middle finger. Oh, I'm sorry, tall man. Yep, and the live show was days before 9/11. Wow. Very very ironic name considering it was a few days before a huge event where a lot of people died. Maybe George Carlin knew something we didn't. Ooh, conspiracy. I'm kidding. Yeah, that's what sets George Carlin apart from a lot of other hacky comedians who get off on being as provocative and offensive as possible with no real punchline, just punching down on minority groups and all that shit, again, with no punchline at all. Um, he wasn't like someone who just was offensive for the sake of being offensive. He had clear boundaries. Like, you know, he didn't believe in the whole punching down thing. And, that live show with the name, I kind of like it when a lot of people die. He knew it probably wasn't the best to put out a live show, to publish a live show with that name right after a terrorist attack where a lot of people died. That's one of the reasons why he's one of the very few stand-up comedians I've ever given a shit about. You know, he was offensive and provocative, sure, but he knew he knew the exact types of people to be offensive and provocative towards, and you know, wasn't someone who was just that for the sake of being that. If only he was still alive and still doing stand-up. That due to be in his 80s by now. Late 80s, I think. So even if he was alive, who knows if he'd still be doing stand-up, but if he were alive and still doing his shows, he'd have. I can't imagine what he'd do with the. I can't imagine what kind of material he'd have today. With all the shit that goes on in our fucking in our news cycles. One of the live show dates was exactly a day before the attacks. Well, yeah, I'm kind of glad that I, was only 6 months old or about to be 6 months old when 9/11 happened. Obviously, I have no memory of the day, and I'm fine with that. You know, I've been told by family that it was obviously a very scary day, especially since, we live here in NYC where the towers fell. Not knowing, the fear of the unknown. What if another attack happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? Who the fuck was behind this attack? Just a lot of mass panic that I'm glad that I have no memory of. My mom told me that the night after the attack, she took me to my father's house where a family friend was also there, and another family member was also there as well. I remember she said they were trying to see if any takeout place was open, and there was one Chinese place that was still open, and they ordered for a delivery. And surprised there was even any place open at all that night. But business is business, I suppose. Actually, my mom told me a pretty haunting story a few years ago relating to 9/11. She was dating this guy briefly in her senior year of high school, um, who decided he was going to be a firefighter after graduating. He was going to go through the whole training process of that. She broke up with him right before they graduated, so she didn't keep in touch with him at all post graduation. And my mom has thought about him throughout the years, on and off. And I think it wasn't until 6 years ago she wanted to try to reach out to him just to, catch up with him, talk to him, see how life was going for him. She didn't, she looked him up on Facebook. She couldn't find him. She looked up his family's name on Facebook, and she was able to find his mom on Facebook. And that's where she saw a post written by his mother on one of the anniversaries of 9/11. And that's when she found out that he was a first responder in 9/11, and he was in the South Tower when it collapsed. So he did become a firefighter. Unfortunately, that happened to him. And my mom found out he had a daughter that was only a few years old, and he was married, and it's just awful. Last winter was snowy and freezing, many mornings in the single digits. And it wasn't that much different here in New York. I don't know if we had any days in the single digits. Maybe we had. I mean, I know you live in Jersey, and our weather isn't that far off from yours. Um, so maybe we did, and I just don't remember. Well, then again, I sleep through the morning, so um, if we had any mornings in the single digits, I didn't get to experience that, thankfully. But yeah, I remember getting quite a bit of snow last winter, and it was pretty cold. Actually, I remember around this year, late November of last year, it was already really fucking cold, and I had to wear a heavy jacket. This year is definitely better in that regard. I mean, we're in late November, and I remember by late November last year, it was much colder than it is this year. I remember when you used to have that Roger Waters profile pic. I did. I think I had that in like what, 2020, 2021. That was another good one from one of his Facebook rants. He's yelling anti-Semite. Uh, it's funnier out of context. George Carlin actually had purpose with his comedy. Yeah, it wasn't just offensive for the sake of being offensive. He almost always had a point he wanted to convey. He wasn't just punching down on minority groups for the sake of a cheap laugh, like a lot of hacky comedians, like Dave Chappelle in recent years with this whole anti-trans shtick. No real punchline, and it's all just, aren't these trans people really weird and disgusting? And how about that woke left, huh? Always wanted to cancel me. Let me whine about that on my fucking Netflix comedy special. Fuck that guy. And fuck him for taking Saudi money as well. Same with Bill Burr and all the other fucking hack fraud comedians who went on that comedy tour or played at or performed at that comedy special in Saudi Arabia. I never want to hear any of those fucking people complain about free speech and being canceled ever again when they willingly performed and made money with a country that has some of the most draconian anti-free speech laws on the planet, killed a journalist because they didn't like his coverage. I even slipped on ice multiple times last winter and was very sick all throughout February, probably due to the extreme cold. I haven't been sick in 3 years. I remember the last time I got sick was right after a family gathering I went to in November of 2022. That was when one of my uncles on my father's side, well, he's not uncle by blood, but he was married to one of my aunts. He turned, like I said, it was his 60th birthday. We had a whole big birthday party for him. It was actually a surprise birthday party. And that was a lot of fun, but someone there must have been sick, and I caught whatever they had. It was a fever. Um, and I was fucking sick for like a week straight. Couldn't go to college, couldn't do anything. I was coughing so hard all day, all night, to the point where every time I coughed, it felt like I was getting punched in the stomach really hard. It was horrible. I have a very strong immune system. I hardly ever get sick, but the one big drawback of that is when I do get sick, I get sick really bad. Really bad. Yeah, speaking about the ice, slipping on ice though. I remember when I was a kid during the winter, um, after it snowed, there was a puddle in our garden that turned to ice, and I thought that was so cool, and I wanted to step on it, and right away I slipped. It was a pretty bad slip too. Didn't break anything or hurt myself that much, but it's still it was still not fun. I was a fucking idiot for wanting to play on top of a ice puddle. The Kevin Cosgrove call from 9/11 will forever haunt me. I know exactly what call you're talking about. The thing that's especially haunting, though, is there are a lot of other calls that are equally as haunting as that call that have not been made public, but a lot of people from the towers called 911 that day. And I think around the time the South Tower collapsed, um, right before that they called, and I think there were a lot of other phone recordings that haven't been made public where you could hear the tower collapse. But yeah, that was a very that's a call that sticks with you. That scream he makes as the tower collapses, and you could hear the tower collapsing. It's especially haunting when you watch an upload that syncs the call with footage of the tower collapsing. And yeah, like I said, my mom's ex boyfriend from high school died in that. LOL Superman is quite a haunting piece of 9/11 media. Isn't that footage of someone jumping out of one of the tower windows and falling on the ground? Yeah, I don't mind that being lost. I've heard about that. I don't get why people really want to seek that out, but I mean, I'm no stranger to being interested in morbid lost media as well. Like I remember there's a pretty infamous piece of lost media that is partially found now of some female news reporter that shot herself live on TV. Audio of that somehow surfaced online a few years ago. Listened to that, and it was incredibly haunting. And I think that actually was verified by people who were colleagues of hers, or family members. I think either one of the two, saying that actually was real audio, and they have no idea how that was obtained and posted online. Or it could have been bullshit. I don't know. Maybe it was a really well done fake, and the whole it being verified as hearsay. But I don't know. Still very, still a very haunting recording though. But yeah, the audio is more than enough. I don't need to see footage of a woman shooting herself live on TV. I remember being disturbed when I first heard Mohammed Atta's conversation with flight control. Yeah, I've heard some flight recordings from 9/11 as well. But 9/11 is something I don't really want to search up on online, because even though I did live through the day, but obviously I have no memory of the day because I was only an infant. But you know it's an extremely touchy subject, especially since I live in NYC. I know people who lived through that day here in NYC, and they know firsthand just the amount of terror and panic that occurred on that day. And it's something incredibly morbid that I don't really go out of my way to search up all that often. A few years ago, I think in 2023, I did hear the full broadcast of Howard Stern's show on 9/11, and that was pretty haunting. I mean, some of it was pretty disgusting though. Like I remember some callers saying shit like we need to do something about these dot heads or whatever. Or towel heads. It was really disgusting Islamophobic shit was said on there. I think Howard Stern even said, "Let Israel loose," trying to insinuate that it was Palestine that was behind the attack. And yeah, but the stuff that interested me the most about that broadcast was, just the panic and the whole like covering the attack as it was going on. That stuff was fascinating to me. The Mario 64 Big Star Secret Screamer was partially found recently from someone dusting off an old computer and looking at the cache files on it. That's funny. Yeah, sometimes people just have shit that people are really seeking out on like their computer. It makes me think of, all the people who have really desired pieces of lost media in their possession, but they have no idea, like, that they have no idea about the big search. They have no idea that people really want to seek out that piece of media that they have. It's interesting and kind of funny to me. Lost media is always kind of, I mean, it's not a huge interest of mine, but, I do like watching lost media videos about lost media from time to time. Mostly from like Blame It on George. I like his lost media stuff. I like those found lost media videos he uploads at the end of every year. Well, I mean, I know he uploads them incrementally throughout the year, but I like waiting for the big video at the end of the year where he compiles all uh, found pieces of lost media that were found in a specific year. The only time I ever experienced a piece of lost media, like, actually got to see a piece of lost media when it aired. I've mentioned it before. Some weird Jimmy Neutron Mystery Science Theater 3000 parody where you only saw, I think it was Jimmy, Sheen, and Carl's silhouettes watching the movie and commentating over it. As far as I know, that was never aired again, never released anywhere. Um, and it was lost for years until I think someone dug up a VHS recording they had of it. I remember thinking that was so weird when I was a kid. Of course, back then I didn't know what Mystery Science Theater 3000 was. Never saw the show. Only first heard of that show the last, like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and that's when I was reminded of that Jimmy Neutron special, and I was like, this looks really familiar. I thought I saw something like this, but it was about Jimmy Neutron, and then I looked it up, and I was like, and then I found out that was lost media. I'm still really glad the people behind Subways of Your Mind got identified last year. And that was a big find, really big find. That was like the final boss of Lost Wave, Lost Music in general. I thought that song was never going to be found because that search was going on since, well, like, what, the 2000s? And people weren't getting it for like a decade plus. People weren't getting any closer to finding the song, and I thought for sure it was probably like some incredibly obscure demo tape that somehow got played on the radio once, and there was going to be no information found on the band and who made the song and all that shit. But defied my expectations. I'm glad I was wrong about that. And I'm glad all the band members are still alive and seem to still, like each other and have performed the song and have released new songs, I believe, since. And, you got the best ending possible when it came to that. I was also kind of half expecting, like, if the song name was ever identified and the band was ever identified, one or more of the members would be dead by now. But they're all still alive, and they all seem like pretty chill people on top of that. Another bad ending would have been them just kind of brushing off all the people who wanted to find the song, and then they finally got identified, and they're just kind of like, "Fuck off! I don't want to speak to any of you." It's also funny that everyone knows that song. Um, the song that was found in a porn movie that was hilarious. But that was a good ending too. The guy behind that song seems to have really enjoyed the newfound attention and really happy that a song he made so many decades ago for a porn movie that was, I'm sure, well, it was completely forgotten for many decades until just to like what, 5 years ago. He never found the actual master tape of that song, though, right? The only way you could listen to the original song is still in that porn movie, right? That's unfortunate. I was hoping he'd find an actual like copy of the song and clean it up. And I know he did a re-recording of the song, but it just doesn't hit the same. I think he said he's trying to find the master tape again from another source. Well, I hope he finds it. That's the one last bit of, lost media, I guess, that master tape. The one last piece of the puzzle, so to speak. Because I would really like to hear a clean version of that song without the, moaning and groaning and grunting over it, you know? I know people have tried to make their own remasters of the song, but obviously it wouldn't sound as clean as like, an actual remaster of the master tape. And I've heard some of the remasters, and they're all kind of like awkward to listen to because it's very obvious they tried very hard to get rid of the sounds of the man and the woman, whoever the fuck they were, moaning and grunting over the audio, and some of the parts of the song go really quiet because they're trying to erase that audio. But yeah, that was like the funniest ending possible when it came to that search. I remember seeing people like theorize maybe it was made for a porn movie, but I was like, nah, it sounds like it was made for like a commercial or something, or maybe some obscure non-pornographic movie, but no, it actually was made for porn. Jesus. Well, I mean, if I remember correctly, the guy said he did songs for porn because it paid well, and he was kind of like a struggling artist back then, and I can respect that. It was a lot harder to have a real hit song than it was to like make you know songs for porn and make money off of that. But hey, the song is legitimately a banger, and he really didn't have to make a song that good for a porn movie, but he did, and I respect the fact that he did still try really hard, even knowing the song would have ended up over a scene of two porn stars fucking. I remember people thought Carl 92 was eating chips in the recording he shared of ulterior motives. Yeah, those sounds are very different. Most certainly not someone just eating chips. And with that said, 2 hours. Ugh, my voice is giving out. This stream felt a lot quicker than 2 hours. Jesus Christ. Like, even more so than past streams for some reason. Maybe I was especially having fun during this stream. I don't know. Or this stream was extra fun, I mean. I don't know. For some reason, time really fucking flew by, even more so than it usually does during these streams. That's a good thing. Anyway, thank you all who participated in the chat. This was a very fun stream and a very active stream, and I'm very thankful for that. And it is a lot of fun interacting with each and every single one of you in the chat. And yeah, thank you to all who have stuck by this in the last 2 hours listening to me yap. I don't know how you do it, and thank you to all those who were here before but aren't here now. I appreciate you all just the same. Yeah, I'm gonna give my voice a rest now, and yeah, the next stream will be sometime in December. I don't know when, but it'll almost definitely be a Friday in December. Anyway, goodbye for real now.